Elizabeth. Hi. There. Hi, Mara. Hi, Jeanette. Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, Amy. Awesome. Okay, everybody, it is 4:30 and we have got a packed agenda for you tonight. So we are going to go ahead and get started right away as we continue letting folks in from the waiting room. We had lots of registrations for this panel tonight. So just a quick note as we go in, please go ahead and make sure that your line is muted so that we can make sure that we get through as much of this juicy conversation as we can. And please also know that we're not about lecturing at you all. We are all about community. So please hang out in the chat, engage with each other, introduce yourself if you have not yet done so in the chat, and let us know what you are most excited about learning from tonight's event. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. All right, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Ayten Salahi. I'm the founder and executive director of the Planetary Health Collective. I'm also a registered dietitian and chair-elect of the Hunger and Environmental Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group. And I am joined tonight by our wonderful director of operations, Bretta Ahlstrom. She will be managing everything in the chat. So if you have any questions, any tech questions, go ahead and shoot those over to Bretta in the chat. And we are joined in spirit by Mary Purdy, our Director of Education. She's not feeling super well tonight, so send her some healing vibes, everybody, and she'll be joining us for our next panel. So just a quick run through of tonight's agenda. As I mentioned, we're all about community here, and we're all about actually engaging and having a conversation about these topics surrounding sustainability, because let's be honest, it's a loaded topic and there are so many different dimensions of it to explore, and it can feel kind of scary and intimidating sometimes. So we want everybody to feel welcome. And so please engage in the chat, ask questions as we go. We are actually going to be taking your questions as we introduce our panelists from tonight's event and sharing them as we go with the panelists. So please feel welcome to stay active and engaged in the chat, so it doesn't feel just like a lecture. It feels more like we're just hanging out together. All right, so we're going to start off tonight's event just by chatting a little bit about some norms and etiquette on the webinar, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with at this point. I'm going to tell you all a little bit more about the Planetary Health Collective, and then I'm going to share with you a quick action opportunity that you can do right now in 5 minutes before we dive into the panel event. So at the PHC, of course, we're all about education, incubating leadership potential, but we're also about activating and taking action on what we know that we can do today. So we're going to be sharing an action opportunity for all of you. And if you could just go ahead and double check that your line is muted, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to pass it off to Bretta at the very end to share some fantastic resources. These are the kinds of things that you might be like, man, I really wish I knew what was going on in the food and climate space. Bretta is going to be sharing some resources from our last food and climate coffee chat that she hosted through the Planetary Health Collective, which is an event that we hold monthly on Fridays, which is kind of a free mentorship space. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, Bretta will share the link to register for the next food and climate coffee chat. It's turned into a little bit more of an action hour, if that's your thing, which is fantastic. So keep an eye on the chat to join us for the next coffee chat. And we also have a really cool opportunity that we are going to be announcing here tonight for the very first time. And you're all going to have a very unique opportunity to get in on something that we've been working on behind the scenes at the PHC. So hang out, stay with us for the next hour, stay engaged, and we're so excited to have you. Without further ado, let's jump into the norms and etiquette for tonight's call. Basic stuff, you guys. We all know this by now. Just go ahead and mute your line. Don't take it personally if we do mute you. We just want to make sure that we can honor and respect everybody's time who's joined us here tonight for the event. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. If you have not yet done so, let us know what you're most excited to gain from tonight's event and whose land you're on. And please remember that we practice respect here and everywhere. This is a safe, diverse, and identity-affirming space, so please respect that. We will also be offering opportunities for you to participate, so take advantage of that. We have an incredible panel of 3 food and nutrition professionals here tonight who are doing very different work in different sectors in the food system, but are all having a profound impact and pushing the needle forward on how sustainability is integrated into their work. So please send your questions to them directly into the chat so that we can share them and get your answers as best we can. Go ahead and ignore this. We're not using the raise hand feature. Just please send your questions directly into the chat. And if you would like to donate to the Planetary Health Collective, we are 100% donation-based 501c3 nonprofit. So your donations really make a huge difference in helping us to be able to put on events like this, continue building our community, and continue building out the offerings that we can create for all of you. So thank you all so much for being here. And let's jump into who we are as the Planetary Health Collective. So I have seen some familiar names. Oops, I double clicked. I'm seeing some familiar names, so I know that there are some of you out there that are already familiar with the PHC, but if you can, just pop into the chat and let us know how you found out about tonight's event. I would love to hear how everybody found out about our panel series tonight. So we at the Planetary Health Collective are a 501c3 that is committed to mitigating climate change and nourishing human health simultaneously by leveraging the unique proximity that food and nutrition professionals have to the food system. We wholeheartedly believe that people who are coming into food systems work at every level, whether that's as a dietitian, as a dietetic intern, as a chef, as a food policy person, as a lawyer, as a food systems collaborative developer, all of us have such a unique position and powerful opportunity to influence this cohesion of sustainability and human health and to make that kind of the norm moving forward rather than the exception. So we're at the PHC, we create opportunities to activate, incubate, and elevate leadership potential among all of you to get engaged in the fight for a more just, regenerative, and climate resilient future for all and not just some. Our ultimate vision is to become the go-to resource for all of you, for food and nutrition professionals, to channel their unique skills and passions into this fight. So whatever it is that you are passionate about, whatever it is that you are good at, just know that there is space for you in this work. And it's not just that there is space, but you are so important. Your skills are so important. Your interest, your passion, your curiosity is so important to creating a more sustainable food future for everyone. So thank you again for being here. And that is who we are at the Planetary Health Collective. All right. So if you have joined us here tonight, you've joined us to meet our panelists. This is our Sustainability in Nutrition Careers panel. And tonight we are joined by three incredible women who I am so proud to have on our call tonight. And we are going to do a quick introduction for all of them in just a moment. But before we dive into their introduction, as promised, I want to give you all an opportunity to take action right now on something that is happening right now to push the needle forward on sustainability. So before we dive into their introductions, is anybody here familiar with the Environmental Justice for All Act? Just drop a little me or something in the chat if it's something that you're familiar with. And if not, no worries. It's a very, very cool opportunity. It's a cool policy out there. And we are going to share with you an opportunity right now to support the Environmental Justice for All Act. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll say it again. The Environmental Justice for All Act provides a blueprint for engaging all communities from the start and developing federal and state level projects in a better, more responsible, and more inclusive way. So the EGAA will help to remedy decades of environmental racism while empowering frontline communities to hold polluters accountable. So we are providing an opportunity for you all here to hold Congress accountable to support this inclusive, ambitious, progressive, and community-driven piece of legislation. So you can actually write to your member of Congress right now by heading to this link, which was shared by our partners at Earth Justice. Greta's going to share the link in the chat right now, so make sure you toggle over to the chat, hit that, and it will guide you through not even a 5-minute exercise for how you can let your member of Congress know that you care about getting this bill passed. And I'm telling you, this is the kind of stuff that matters. Engaging with your congresspeople matters. So take this opportunity to get familiar with the Environmental Justice for All Act and let your congressperson know that you care about this and that their reelection depends on them caring about these issues as well. So go ahead and bookmark that if you can't do it right now, but I highly, highly, highly recommend when you're done with it, let us know in the chat if you've actually submitted it and we will celebrate with you and we will do it with you. Okay, so without further ado, I think it's time to dive into our panelist introductions. So tonight we are joined by Alice Pio, Adrian Udarbe, and Sharon Palmer, and each of them has an incredible story, a very different story that they're going to share with us right now. We will get started with Alice Pio, who is the sous chef in the Stanford Flavor Lab, Residential and Dining Enterprises, Stanford Dining, Hospitality and Auxiliaries Research and Development Kitchen. She's incredible, as you can tell. Prior to starting in this role, Alice also trained at the International Culinary Center in Campbell, California, and worked in some of the top kitchens in the Bay Area. I might butcher this pronunciation, so Alice, you're going to have to correct me, including Vino Enoteca and Hachidu Hachi. As a sous chef in the Stanford Flavor Lab, she also develops exciting new recipes that support Stanford's residential and dining enterprises, culinary nutrition, and sustainable food ethos and values. So you're going to learn all about how Stanford University actually brings sustainability into their dining efforts. She works in constant support of Stanford's academic mission to promote a holistic approach to improving what people eat, how we all access food, and the role that food plays in our lives. So Alice, if you could go ahead and turn your video on, I will stop my screen share and you can go ahead and share yours. There you are. Awesome.
Hi. Awesome. Thank you so much, I-10. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice Pio, and yes, I am the sous chef. I'm not sharing my screen yet. Oh, there we go. I'm the sous chef with Stanford Dining in the Residential and Dining Enterprises sector. And as I-10 had mentioned, I am currently supporting the Central Production Kitchen, the Flavor Lab, and special projects, as well as athletic dining currently. Well, there I am. Okay. Sorry about that. And so I'm really excited to share a little insight on how we practice sustainable food at Stanford Dining through food waste prevention as it reflects the climate smart dining pillar of our One Plate, One Planet sustainable food program, as well as food choice architecture, which is a powerful tool to encourage plant forward eating. So Stanford Dining serves a little over 20,000 meals every day, prepared by over 300 staff members across 11 dining halls. All of our programs are carefully designed to create climate smart dining operations, from plant forward menus and food waste reduction to regenerative agriculture, and the positive potential of the impact our physical spaces can have where we all eat and gather together. So we know that sustainability means many different things to many different people. And as an institution, we choose to focus on different elements of sustainability over others. So with that context in mind, we work to leverage our purchasing power, thought leadership, menu design, culinary creativity and diversity, our partnerships and collaborations throughout the food system to support the following 6 pillars of sustainability. And so these are our One Plate, One Planet pillars. And these pillars include climate smart dining, racial equity and supporting Black businesses, curbing deforestation through supply chain pressure, thriving oceans, catalyzing a circular economy of food, and embracing systems thinking. Within climate smart dining, we focus especially on project drawdown solutions for reducing food waste and advancing plant forward diets. So across our organization, we emphasize to our staff not only how to reduce food waste, but how to prevent it in the first place. And we recently released our food waste prevention playbook, which captures a full array of strategies we employ to minimize food waste, from committing to long-term action and collecting and analyzing data, from cultivating a culture of food waste prevention, and that is for staff and for students as well, and engaging those students to operationalize best practices. So what's most important is that every member of our staff and the students see the roles that they play, and feels empowered to operationalize these best practices. So all of us receive continuous training on food waste prevention strategies, training in using lean path technologies to measure and track our food waste at each individual unit level, and big picture training to inspire each staff member to find their individual why. Only with intrinsically motivated individuals can we as an organization translate these pillars into practice. So regarding plant-forward diets, to make these menu options appealing to our students, we use culinary excellence, leading with flavor and beautiful, craveable, globally diverse dishes, as well as our sustainable food ethos to guide our sourcing decisions. But most importantly, well, not most importantly, but also importantly, food choice architecture. And what is food choice architecture? So food choice architecture encompasses all the aspects of how our foods are offered and framed within the dining halls, and how these considerations can influence food selection. We utilize these strategies to design health and sustainability into our dining programs, making healthier and more sustainable choices easier, more prominent, and more desirable, while still offering a wide range of food options. Our dining halls are also used as living laboratories. So we do a couple different studies to see how students interact with language, with portion size, and how we can influence our sustainability and food waste prevention in those different ways. Let's see. So these programs are the backbone of providing delicious and nourishing sustainable food choices to our community every day. I can really talk for hours and hours of the nuances of our sustainable food practices and how they're woven into our daily lives. Just for the sake of time, I wanted to give you a quick overview of kind of how we practice sustainability and the different layers that are encompassed within Stanford Dining. Above all, R&DE's core value of build a sustainable future acts as a constant underlying current and an active driving force for all our decision making, and fostering a culture where sustainable, healthy, and delicious foods are the norm in our kitchens, and where climate in our dining halls, and where climate consciousness is the norm in our kitchens. Thank you.
Alice, you're amazing. And I could really, I feel like we were just getting a little teaser as to all the incredible work that you and your team are doing at Stanford. I mean, opening up the conversation about how the impact of our food and the physical spaces where we eat determines the foods that we eat is so fascinating to me. So I will definitely be asking you about that once we get to the audience Q&A. So thank you so much for that rich introduction to the work that you all do at Stanford. And we're going to hear a little bit more about your role in all of that as well. So let's have Adrienne, turn on your camera. We're going to have you hop in and do your introduction as well. So while she's turning on her camera, I want to let you all know, Adrienne Udarbe is the Executive Director of Pinnacle Prevention, which is an Arizona-based nonprofit organization that is dedicated to cultivating a just food system and opportunities for joyful movement. In this role, she leads innovative efforts in food systems, community design, policy, advocacy, and research. And Adrienne is also a registered dietitian. She shares more than two decades of experience in public health and public sector systems with a focus on justice, access, and community engagement to support community well-being for all. Adrienne is a passionate advocate inspired by good causes, good people, and good food. So Adrienne, I think you're in the right place, and we are so lucky to have you here tonight. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your story of self.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really great to be in good company with everybody. And I absolutely love that you all are taking advocacy and action on the environmental justice for all issue. I'm proud to say that one of the key sponsors of that bill is our own here in Arizona, Representative Grijalva, who's done really great work in this area. So we're really proud of that and love to shine a positive spotlight on that. As Aitan mentioned, I am also a registered dietitian, and my background has primarily been in the public health space now for more than 2 decades, oftentimes serving in the government sector, and then left and founded Pinnacle Prevention in 2014. So we're going on 8 years of service and nonprofit work centering public health and community nutrition. And a core aspect of our work really is around sustainability, because you cannot have public health without also intersecting with and thinking about climate health and thinking about sustainability. And you can't have good food for folks if you're not also thinking about all of those issues. So our work is serving Arizona statewide. Mostly our work focuses in on the policy area, and our sustainability efforts are really centered around Arizona Food Systems Network. So just proud to be able to share space with some of the amazing leaders all across the state of Arizona who are doing this work. And this is so incredibly important to us because Arizona really is at the heart of some of the crises that we're seeing with respect to drought and water crisis and land access issues. And so this has to be core to the work that we're doing when we're getting to root cause of food access. So our policy work through Arizona Food System Network is really centered around 4 priorities. We look at food access and distribution when it comes to sustainable practices. We also look at land and water access and protection. And then we're also focused on climate smart foodways. And then we've also added a 4th priority area, which is agriculture workforce development. In this work, we really try to uplift and center Indigenous voices, especially are important here in Arizona, and the wisdom and the lead that they hold and can share with the rest of us in terms of sustainable practices is really important. We do also do some programming work directly with the community, and that work does really center local foods in our efforts. So I'm sure wherever you are joining us, you also may have similar programs in your areas, but we lead the Double Up Food Bucks program here in Arizona, which matches $1 for every SNAP benefit spent with an additional $1 for local Arizona grown foods at Arizona farmers markets and CSAs and farm stands and some corner stores and grocery as well. And we also lead the Arizona Farmers Market Nutrition Program. So we're really proud in this space to be uplifting our local farmers and our local farmers markets, because we know the heart of those sustainable practices really rest and lie with them. And also we know that they need a lot of infrastructure and funding support to continue to do the important work that they're doing. In our everyday practices, as we mentioned, our mission is to cultivate a just food system and opportunities for joyful movement. So we also work with community leaders, cities and towns to think about the ways that our communities are designed that better support connection and opportunity for sustainability for all as well. So I look forward to sharing a little bit with you all more as we go along, but that's just a little bit about me and our background. And I'll drop a link into the chat box so you can access the Arizona Food System Network Action Plan that shares a little bit more details about our priority areas as well.
Brilliant, Adrienne. Thank you so much for that incredible primer as to the work that you were doing. Such important work. And it's so interesting because I think when most people think about Arizona, they don't really think that it's a big agricultural state, but it really is. And so I love that you've highlighted here that agriculture, local farms, local food systems play a really important part here in furthering the needle on how sustainability rolls out at the state level, specifically in Arizona. And an interesting piece that I want to highlight that both you and Alice have brought up here is that the actual way that communities and kitchens are structured has such a big impact on the way that we community members engage with our environment and the choices that we make as a result. So we will chat about that a little bit in greater detail. And I'm also really excited to hear the ways that Pinnacle Prevention is centering the Indigenous community in these sustainability efforts. So thank you so much. And we will dive into all of that just momentarily, but we have one more panelist introduction to get through here. And I am so excited to introduce you all to Sharon Palmer. Sharon, you can go ahead and turn your camera on. Sharon is known as the plant-powered dietitian, and she has established an award-winning career in the field of plant-based nutrition and sustainability. She is an accomplished writer, editor, blogger, author, speaker, professor, advisor, and media expert. Safe to say she is a regular old Swiss Army knife. In particular, she has gained recognition for her expertise in plant-based nutrition and sustainability, and she is the author of The Plant-Powered Diet, Plant-Powered for Life, and California Vegan. Sharon, we are so excited to have you on, and go ahead and let the people know a little bit more about your story and what you do.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. And it's just a real honor. My story is going to be a little bit personal because it's about my career, getting into the sustainable food systems movement. But it really started with my parents, who both grew up on farms. My mother grew up on a farm in Arkansas, my father in Minnesota during the Depression and World War II. And my parents later moved to Idaho, and they were neighbors on a farm as teenagers. They ended up marrying and moving to Seattle, where I was born and raised. So I think this deep connection they had with food and how it was grown. We always had a large garden and trees. We canned our own food. We made our own bread. This really kind of created a lifelong love for me about how food is grown and the connections between agricultural and health. So I went to school at Loma Linda University, which now we know is a blue zone. It was not called a blue zone then. And I really focused on nutrition in my work. I worked as a clinical dietitian, a consultant, lots of traditional jobs, eventually a food service director. So at this time, sustainability wasn't something that we were always talking about. However, I was still very interested. I was able to start a recycling program in my hospital all those years ago. But it wasn't really until 2000 when I became a journalist. I really followed my lifelong job of becoming a journalist. And then I started writing about sustainability and primarily plant-based nutrition, which was something that was part of my story. I was raised in a semi-vegetarian home. I went to school at Loma Linda University, the Blue Zone. It was a plant-based community. So I started writing about my passion. We were starting to learn about the connections between plant-based eating and not only health, but sustainability, that the lower environmental impact associated with that diet pattern. So that was exciting. And I started writing a lot about these issues. Of course, I wrote the books that you mentioned, The Plant-Powered Diet, Plant-Powered for Life, California Vegan. And I have another book coming out next year on plant-based eating and diabetes. But really, starting to dive into the sustainability part of that became very interesting for me. And I started writing and speaking on that more and more widely. Of course, I found my people within, even at the beginning when we weren't really talking about sustainable food systems. So I've gotten a lot of opportunities to work in sustainability in my professional career. I did pursue another dream and get my master's in sustainable food systems in 2019. I completed that in Green Mountain College, Vermont, and I teach as adjunct faculty in that program, which is now at Prescott in Arizona. And then another exciting thing happened in 2019, along with co-founders, dietitian co-founders, Chris Bogliano, Kate Geegan, and Shireen Chow. We created Food and Planet, which is a nonprofit organization with a mission of inspiring healthcare professionals to impact consumers, because we know that dietitians are very influential with consumers. Surveys show this. Yet dietitians, when we conducted a survey among dietitians, and we found that dietitians rated their knowledge of sustainable food systems very low. However, they rated the potential that they had to be leaders in this field as very high. So this gap is there in really educating and providing resources. So we created a 2-hour workshop that's free on our website at foodandplanet.org 12% of dietitians in the US have taken that workshop, which is super cool. And we see that their knowledge base after the 2-hour workshop is doubles. So that's really exciting. And we developed the 4 dimensions of sustainable food systems, which includes sociocultural, economic, planetary, and nutrition. So those are also available. We have a resource library that we try to keep all of the leading literature available there. We have downloadable tips and handouts. So there are a lot of free information for healthcare professionals there. So I also have my personal blog and social media that I have a very robust community that I communicate with. And so one of the things that I like to do in my personal professional life is to share easy, attainable, budget-friendly lifestyle strategies where people can connect with their food system, learn a little bit more about how food is grown, try to grow their own food, eat more plant-based, reduce their waste stream, all of these different things that people can do to try to live a more sustainable lifestyle, because I passionately believe that we need to move beyond the business as usual model and we have to impact change. So this is something that I'm trying to do every day. I live in Ojai, California. I moved here about 3 years ago, the land of the Chumash people. And this lifestyle here is moving here has connected me more to a local food system. And I'm involved with a lot of those activities in my community as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic, Sharon. We are so happy to have you. And I know one thing that we've learned from lots of our community members and folks who have attended these panels in the past is there's a little bit of this intimidation factor about, if you're new and an early career dietitian, feeling like you have to make the right first step rather than just making a first step and kind of exploring in your career and letting your career evolve. And I think your personal story is such a powerful example of allowing yourself to kind of experiment with different ways of incorporating plant-based nutrition, sustainability, journalism, food service, so many different pieces and sectors in the food system into the work that you do. So I would love to hear more about that when we dive into our Q&A, which we're going to do right now. So I'm going to have all of the panelists turn their cameras back on and rejoin us. Bretta is going to go ahead and spotlight them so you can see all of us at the same time. We have gotten a couple of audience questions, which I'm sure you've all seen in the chat. And if you do, audience members, if you do have any additional questions that you want to be sure we get to, I'm going to be furiously copying and pasting them into a Word document and making sure that we get to them as best we can. But first, I do want to ask a question to all 3 of you about a critical experience or educational opportunity or training that all 3 of you have done that has really helped you to feel a little bit more confident and competent in incorporating sustainability into your career. So was there kind of a seminal experience or training opportunity that you attended that helped you to feel like, you know what, I can do this, or I can lead in this space? And what was that? And let's have you start, Alice.
So thank you for that question. It's such an impactful question, I think, because there are so many small instances that I can think of that have really built and really given me the confidence to try to lead and have a big impact within sustainability in food systems. But most recently, I attended the Menus of Change conference in Hyde Park in New York. And more than anything, I think my biggest takeaway was that we're all in it together. It's not that it's just one person doing the work or one group doing one thing. It's that all systems need to make a change, that because sustainability can be such an overwhelming concept, and even with climate change, it can seem very daunting. But I think the kind of unity and teamwork that comes from seeing so many different types of professionals, even with this panel. It's encouraging and it's really inspiring to see all these different people coming together from all around the world, all around in different states within the country, in different fields, and all playing their part. So I think that's yeah, my biggest takeaway.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are not familiar, Alice, correct me if I'm not getting this right, but Menus of Change is an event that is hosted in collaboration between the Harvard T.H. School of Public Health and the Culinary Institute of America, I believe, to discuss ways that sustainability can really break into the culinary space, into the production space, into the food service space. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. I got like the teams in. So check out that event if you haven't yet. That would be a really cool place for PHC members to actually meet up in person. So if you do end up going to something like that Alice has recommended, which seems like a really awesome event, I think you can attend virtually also, but if you do go in person, head over to our Planetary Health Collective Facebook page and let us know next year so that we can plan a little in-person meetup. And thank you, Alice, for sharing that. Adrienne, how about you?
Yeah, I think what helped to boost my confidence was connecting with community. We do a lot of focus groups and community conversations, and I was holding this belief in my mind. The story I was telling myself is, who am I as a leader to step up when I'm not a climate scientist? I'm a nutrition scientist. And in my conversations with community, I realized the experts truly are the community members and the farmers themselves. And so when I was going out and having conversation with them and they were telling me about the water crisis experiences that they were having or sharing, you know, how they grow their foods in such beautiful ways, I realized that the wisdom lied there. And that the role that I could play in the systems that I do influence was just uplifting those voices. And so I think that confidence of like the collective effort really helped to mobilize, you know, where I see myself in this space.
Fantastic. Yeah. And in our community, I'm sure in all of these spaces, for some reason, very much so among dietitians, we all feel a little bit of this quote unquote imposter syndrome about getting involved in this kind of work. But you're so spot on that there is room for everybody, and everybody's engagement is not only encouraged, but essential and required for us to really actually get this work done. And as you mentioned earlier as well, really centering the communities and the voices within those communities that are impacted the most by disparate access to resources is a huge and important part of this as well. So thank you so much, Adrienne. How about you, Sharon?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love what the other panelists said. I love Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. I've been to so many of them. I learned so much there. And really all of these opportunities can really build your knowledge base. You know, the things that HEN does, I learned so much of it over the years. And so they really build your knowledge base. But then I'm going to even push it out a little further, you know. And when I took my master's in sustainable food systems, we're seeing in the program that I now teach, we're seeing more and more dietitians enter this program because I was grandfathered into the master's, you know, like I didn't need to have my master's, but there are a lot of dietitians that, you know, are grandfathered into not needing their master's, but they want to stay relevant. So why not take it in something you're really passionate about, you know? So, I mean, I know it's an investment of time, but it's an amazing opportunity if you're really passionate about sustainable food system. And it's just so exciting to see the dietitians that are really getting in all walks of life, you know, getting into furthering their education.
Such a good point. And that's fantastic, Sharon. It's such a great resource to have a professor with us tonight too, to help kind of make folks feel like this is a little bit more of an accessible option for them. And Sharon also mentioned earlier that through Food and Food and Planet, they've put together a masterclass that's accessible in 2 hours and free, you mentioned. So folks can head over there and check that out as well if you're looking for just a good place to start, right? A good foundational place to get started and introducing yourself to these concepts. Okay, so I do have one more question that I want to ask, and then I'm going to start pulling in some of the audience questions because I know we've gotten several at this point. But we would be remiss if we did not ask you all a question that gets really into the nitty-gritty of how you are actually connecting food and climate in your day-to-day work. So I know people here on tonight's call want to hear more about the specific ways that you are weaving sustainability and climate consciousness and climate action into your day-to-day work. So I'm sure that a ton of things are coming to mind for you. So maybe just pick kind of one or two specific things that come to mind that folks who've joined us here tonight can try to integrate into their internships, into their jobs, something that they can take to their employers or their teams to share as an inspiration point. Alice, we'll have you start on this as well, if that's okay. We'll just keep going in order.
So I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is, and this can be for large scale food service operations as well as for your own home, but it's really managing your inventory and I guess forecasting correctly. And what I mean by that is, say you open up your fridge before, it's good to see what you have, what you need to use up before you go grocery shopping. And that's the case in large scale operations as well. I think when you know exactly how much you need, what you need, then you can really reduce your food waste. And that will save you financially, you from a lot of work, but also is beneficial to the planet as well. So I think that is the first thing that comes to mind and is a practice, again, that you can use on a large scale, but also can implement into your daily life. And the second thing is to support local farms. Like the other panelists have said, we have a really beautiful farm here on campus, and it's so inspiring to see firsthand this amazing produce and bounty that comes out of the land. But to have produce that's coming from less than a mile away, and to really be able to support and build relationships with the people who are making and growing this food, I think is so powerful and really inspiring.
That is such a helpful answer, Alice. Thank you so much. I know, in the production space, or when you're working in a commercial kitchen, you have your daily inventory checks, right? Like you go into all the fridges and you check to see how much lettuce you have and how many onions and whatever you have left. And the way that I talk about personalizing that at home is to do what I just call a pantry audit or a fridge audit. So have a little running list somewhere, whether it's in your phone or it's on a whiteboard or on a sticky note on your fridge or something like that, of what are you actually running out of that you need to get this week, instead of just going in and getting the same stuff week over week and not really knowing what you have and then ending up throwing out a bunch of stuff at home. So fantastic point. I absolutely love that. Adrienne, how about you?
Yeah, since we're policy nerds over here, on the daily, policies on our mind, the election is upon us. And so in addition to the effort that you promoted today and the actions that can be taken, Farm Bill is up for reauthorization. So I really would encourage you to examine all of the opportunities to make some improvements and changes in the Farm Bill that better support sustainability. You can get in touch with, we are speaking to our elected officials on a daily basis about these issues. There's the Agricultural Resilience Act that is part of the Farm Bill that I encourage you to know a little bit more about. And then we also work daily in partnership with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, which is NSAC. And I would love to see more dietitians and nutrition professionals in that space as well. I think there's a unique lens and perspective that we offer to that work, combined with the farmers who are in that space and others that can really move forward some great federal policy on a huge level. So that's the daily for us. We are all consumed with policy, and if nothing else, make sure you're asking your folks that you are electing in your district what their platform and their agenda is on sustainability and food and ag issues.
Adrienne, I love that you're bringing policy into this discussion, and I love how different the lenses are that we have from everybody on tonight's panel. This just goes to show how many different areas of impact there really are. And I just want to let everybody know, if you just heard Adrienne mention something called the Farm Bill and you're like, what is that? Like, we don't have any farmers on the call tonight. So the Farm Bill it's a very old bit of a hodgepodge, huge bill that encompasses funding, budget lines, rules, regulations, policy for all kinds of different work that's being done in the US through all food system sectors. So it really isn't just policy for farmer subsidies and things like that. It's actually policy for things like Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP, things like the Double Up Bucks program that Adrienne mentioned she's involved with in Arizona. So the Farm Bill is something that we all have to get to know a little bit better if we care about not only sustainable agriculture, but also nourishing human health and incorporating access as a part of a central, very important, non-negotiable part of that dialogue. So Adrienne, if you wouldn't mind, it'd be so helpful if you have any resources that folks in the chat could look at that help to kind of just demystify the very beginnings 101 stuff of the Farm Bill. If you have anything like that, I know our community would really benefit greatly from looking at those resources. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, Bretta just dropped some in there that are great that I was thinking of, and I'll continue to add to that.
Bretta and I are on the same wavelength. Thank you, Bretta. And Sharon, let's pop over to you for your response.
Yeah, well, in my work, I deal with nutrition messages. So and I think this can apply to anybody's career as a dietitian, is when you're providing a nutrition message, throw in a sustainability message, because they're often hand in hand. I mean, every lecture you do, why not have a slide on sustainability? Or every patient teaching you do. I mean, if you're talking about cardiac health, talk about how beans are not only good for your heart, but they're good for the planet, and they fit into many foodways. And so literally just adding that message to everything we do, whether it's social media, whether it's a blog, whether we're writing, it just should be part of everything we do.
I completely agree. And once you start doing that, you almost feel a little silly even adding it as as like another piece, because you're like, well, obviously the things that are good for the planet are also good for human beings, and here's how. And I think something that you're very masterful at, Sharon, is using the correct language to invite people into that exploration versus having a very severe, it's my way or the highway, there's only one way to eat sustainably kind of approach. So just as a question to you, and we do have some audience questions, so I'm going to start kind of rapid firing to each one of you and see how many we can get through in the next 10 minutes or so. But Sharon, I would love to know what are some tips that you have for people to use language around plant-based diets and sustainable eating that is inviting, encouraging, non-judgmental, and still impactful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I like to use the term plant-based a lot because I feel like that's more inclusive. It encompasses many different types of diets. People have different definitions for it. And I just encourage people to get on the plant-based bandwagon, starting with Meatless Monday, and just find a diet pattern that works for them, because the evidence shows that even if people are semi-vegetarian, they can reduce their carbon footprint by 20%. They can have health benefits. So really just getting, on that bandwagon, really being more open, looking at their foodways, looking at their historical diets, their traditional diets, and finding those healthy plant-based foods and kind of reconnecting people with those traditions, I think is powerful.
That's brilliant. I completely resonate with that. One of my favorite ways to connect with folks from different cultures about their food ways is to have them storytell with me. Like, tell me about foods that you eat at home, or tell me about something that your grandparents used to make that you used to love. And those kinds of conversations are so exciting, right? They're nostalgic, they're warm, they're interesting. You're connecting on a deeper level rather than going down a bullet point list of, like, have chickpeas because of the fiber, and also, you know what I mean? So that's a beautiful point, Sharon. Thank you so much. Alice, I'm popping over to you. We got a question in the chat from you earlier on. I want to make sure we address. So how do the efforts to promote food waste prevention at Stanford compare to neighboring universities? And is the One Plate, One Planet effort more of a local movement, or is it national?
That's a great question. I saw that in the chat and I was really excited that it was asked. while I can't speak exactly to the other universities, food waste prevention and sustainable practices, I have noticed collectively in the university food sector that there is a lot of acknowledgement and action and call to action that is being encouraged right now and really put into place, especially with the scale of how many meals that we're serving a day. All of these practices and the different strategies that we implement in place have so much impact and so much potential for impact that there seems to be a trend of mobilization across, not only in our region, but universities across the country to really implement these strategies in place for food waste prevention and more sustainable food practices, including offering a lot more plant-based and plant-forward dishes as well. And in terms of the One Plate, One Planet sustainable food ethos, that is actually a program that was developed here within Stanford Dining and the Stanford Food Institute. And I would love to see it become a nationwide or even international thing. I think it's really great. And I'm very grateful to be part of a university that is very adamant and supportive of sustainable health for the planet and for people.
That's, yeah, fantastic, Alice. And we were chatting briefly before the event started about how difficult it can be to get conversations and specific efforts around sustainability and reducing food waste into institutions, whether that's hospitals or schools, universities. It can be so difficult and you can run into so much red tape and resistance. But I think what helps us in the larger movement is having examples of hospitals and universities that have done it and have found a way to do it, Stanford being one of them, so that we can point to that example and say, well, they did it, why can't we do it? So having, your example as kind of an expander for other institutions to learn from, I'm sure you're going to be hearing from a lot of people nationwide, hopefully, about how they can do that where they are too. And that's kind of the whole goal of why we want to get everybody together here. And Adrian, that brings me over to you. And Bretta introduced you to us as like the leader of the coalition of coalitions in Arizona for food systems change. So I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions that we got in the chat to get your take on it. And then I'm going to try to selfishly sneak one of mine in too, because I have a lot of thoughts after the White House nutrition conference, and I'm sure all of us here do. But I'm going to start just by asking, so we have some students tonight, which is amazing. We love our students. Thank you all so much for being here. We got a question. As a future dietitian, what made you want to pursue community nutrition specifically in the public sector? And I'm going to bridge that with a different question that we got from another audience member, which is, what do you do if you're not in a position right now that really centers sustainability, or you're around others in your position that don't really care or not really talking about it? So let's see if we can tackle both of those together right now, Adrian.
Yeah. So I'm going to work backwards from that and just say, from a systems change lens perspective, we all exist. We're all working within a system, within a system, within a system. And I think even if you feel like you're not in a position of power to impact or influence change, just examining one practice within your organization or one policy within your organization and starting conversation around that. And it could be proposing, very gently. Sharon talked about the importance of framing so that it is received well, of like, hey, why don't we have a composting program here? Would it be okay if I started that? Let's pilot that. Let's test that. And just little slow baby steps I'd like to really celebrate, I think are really important. So lean into that power. We all hold some type of power in that space, and just make small movements, and don't underestimate the power of small baby steps in addition to the big policy changes that we're all working towards as well too. And I think in the community nutrition space, and I deeply connect with the power of a big population level impact to things.